Hello, and welcome to Boring Pastimes for Sleep. Tonight, we leave behind the noise of the present. We will drift away from the urgency of modern life and settle into the deep, quiet rhythms of the past. We will not focus on the shouts of emperors or the thunder of battles. Instead, we will listen for the softer sounds, the scratch of a stylus on clay, the slow, patient layering of paper and glue, the endless hum of a vacuum tube in a silent room. These are the sounds of the unseen hands that truly built our world. The accountants, the artisans, the keepers of light, and the guardians of secrets. Their stories are not told in epic poems, but in the meticulous daily effort of simply showing up. Their work was often tedious. It was repetitive. It was, by any measure, profoundly boring. And yet, it was these countless mundane acts of care and precision that allowed empires to rise, secrets to be kept, and progress to be made. So, find a comfortable position. Let your breathing slow, and allow yourself to be carried back on the current of time, to a world where the most significant things happened not in a flash, but layer by patient layer. We begin our journey millennia ago, on the sun-baked plains of the Indus Valley, with a man whose entire world was defined by scratches in clay. The air you breathe is hot and dry, carrying the fine, golden dust of the wheat harvest. The sounds are a constant, low hum, the distant lowing of zebu cattle, the chattering of hundreds of workers, the rhythmic rustle of grain being poured from baskets into vast, mud-brick storage bins. You are not in a palace or a temple. You are in the administrative heart of a great Indus Valley city. Perhaps Mohenjo-Daro or Harappa, circa 2500 BCE, and you are a scribe, not a poet, not a chronicler of kings, but a grain accountant. Your world is defined not by epic tales, but by capacity, yield, and distribution. Your kingdom is the granary. Your name is forgotten, as are the names of almost all who did this work. You are a functionary, a vital cog in the machine of one of the world's first great urban civilizations. Your office is a small, shaded room adjacent to the main granary complex, with a single small window offering a view of the endless comings and goings of laborers. The floor is packed earth. Your desk is a low bench. Your tools are your most precious possessions. Before you sits a lump of fine, wet, gray clay from the riverbank, cleaned of pebbles and organic matter, kneaded to a perfect plastic consistency. Beside it, a small bowl of water to keep your hands moist. And in your hand, you hold your stylus. It is not a reed pen for ink, but a sharp, pointed stick of hardened wood or bone, perhaps tipped with a tiny fragment of flint for precision. Its ends are sharp, but its sides are smooth from years of use. Polished by the oil of your skin, the day's first task is to prepare the tablet. You take a handful of clay and roll it into a smooth, oblong ball. Then flatten it carefully between your palms into a thick, cushion-like tablet. With the side of your stylus, you gently smooth the edges, creating a neat, rectangular form. It must be thick enough to hold its shape without cracking as it dries, but thin enough to be easily stored. This tactile process, repeated dozens of times a day, is as familiar to you as your own breath. Now, the information arrives. A foreman appears at the doorway, speaking quickly. From the northern fields, 3rd irrigation sector, 27 standard measures of barley. Quality, good. For the central storage silo, you do not look up. Your mind is already translating his words into the system. Your hand moves. You press the stylus into the upper left corner of the soft clay. Not writing words, for the Indus script remains undeciphered and may not even represent a language as we know it. You are making marks. A series of short, straight incisions for numbers. A single vertical stroke for 1, 2, 4, 2. A different mark, perhaps a horizontal stroke, crossing multiple verticals for 10. You tally the 27 measures. Next to the tally, you impress a small, intricate seal from a carved stone stamp tied to your belt, your personal signifier, marking you as the official recorder. This seal is your identity, your authority, but numbers alone are useless. What do they refer to? You now add the ideogram. With the tip of your stylus, you incise a tiny schematic drawing. A single stalk with a few grains at the top, barley, a simple, jar-like shape, a standard measure. A series of wavy lines, water, meaning the irrigation sector. A square with a circle inside it, the central granary. Each symbol is not a picture but a concept, refined over centuries into a minimalist, efficient form. The entire transaction, 27 measures of barley, from a specific field to a specific storage. Binnies captured in a space smaller than your palm. It is a bureaucracy of scratches. You will make dozens of these tablets today. Each delivery, each distribution, each allocation for temple offerings, for public works, for seed, for the next season, must be recorded. The clay dust mixes with the sweat on your hands, forming a thin gray paste. The only sound in your room is the soft scratch, scratch, scratch of your stylus and the occasional slap of a newly finished tablet being placed on a drying rack. This is the profound boredom of civilization. This meticulous, repetitive act of accounting is what allows the city to exist. It is what prevents famine, what manages surplus, what enables the planning and feeding of large-scale projects. The magnificence of the Indus Valley, its advanced drainage systems, its uniform brickwork, its great baths is built not just on mud brick, but on information, and you are the keeper of that information. As you place the finished tablet with the others, its surface still cool and damp under your fingertips, you look at the string of cryptic symbols. They are clear to you and to the other scribes, a language of administration that spans the civilization. But to anyone else, they are mere mystery. You have captured the reality of 27 measures of grain, but in doing so, you have created a tiny, sealed enigma that will harden in the sun, and, though you cannot know it, endure for over 4,000 years. What story does this tablet truly tell? Not just of grain, but of a system, a mind, a civilization that chose to record its reality in this precise, yet utterly silent way. And what would happen if this meticulous system of scratches, this entire language of administration, were one day to simply stop? The tablets you inscribed in the morning are now dry, their surfaces hardened to a pale gray, the scratches you made transformed into permanent, precise grooves. They are no longer malleable records, but fixed documents. Your work, however, is far from over. The creation of the individual tablet is but the first word in a much longer sentence. Now comes the truly tedious part, the organization, the cross-referencing, the synthesis of data. This is where accounting becomes architecture, building a coherent picture of the city's wealth from thousands of these tiny, scattered clay fragments. You gather the day's first batch of tablets from the drying rack. They are cool to the touch and light as bones. You arrange them on your bench, not by the order in which you made them, but by their content. All the tablets concerning barley deliveries go in one pile, those for wheat in another, those detailing distributions to bakeries or allotments to temple breweries in others. You are sorting the lifeblood of the city into its constituent streams. Your next tool is a larger, flattered tablet of damp clay. This is your ledger. On it, you will not record individual transactions, but their sums. You carefully study each small tablet in the barley delivery pile. Your eyes quickly scan the familiar ideograms, your mind adding the tally marks. The foreman from the northern fields reported 27 measures. Another tablet from the eastern delta fields records 34 measures of barley. Quality noted with a special symbol indicating slightly blighted. A third notes 12 measures from a small holder on the city's outskirts. Your stylus moves over the ledger tablet, adding the marks. 27 plus 34 plus 12. You create a new, larger tally for the total barley intake for the day. But a granary is not just a repository. It is a distribution center. You now turn to the tablets recording outflows. The temple of the Mother Goddess requires 10 measures for ritual bread. The Public Works Department, overseeing a new dig for a drainage channel, requires 50 measures to feed its laborers. A shipment of 20 measures is to be sent via river barge to a smaller satellite town upriver. You subtract these from your intake total, creating a running balance of the barley remaining in the central silos. This is a painstaking process. A mistake in addition, a misread symbol, a tablet misplaced in the wrong pylene error could ripple through the entire system, leading to a shortfall, a misapplication, hunger, and discontent. The pressure is immense, but it is a quiet, constant pressure, like the weight of the earth. It does not manifest in shouts or alarms, but in the intense, furrowed concentration on your face, in the way you double-check every tally, every symbol. You are performing mathematics and logistics with a vocabulary of scratches. This system is not yours alone. It is universal across the cities of the Indus Valley. A scribe in distant Harappa would understand your tablets instantly. The uniformity is staggering. The standard measures, the numerical system, the artistic style of the ideograms are held to a consistency that speaks of a powerful, centralized cultural authority, perhaps a guild of scribes or a rigorous, long-term training system. Yet, we have no evidence of emperors or grand palaces to enforce this uniformity. It seems to have been maintained for its own sake, for the pure, practical necessity of clear communication. The boring becomes the bedrock of empire. As you complete the ledger, you impress your seal at the bottom, authorizing the totals. This larger tablet will be fired in a kill tomorrow, making it. The smaller transaction tablets, however, serve a more temporary purpose. Once their data has been transferred to the ledger, they are often recycled. You gather a handful of them and drop them into a jar of water, where they will slowly dissolve back into sludge, to be kneaded and reused tomorrow, their information now absorbed into the larger, ongoing narrative of the city's account books. This act of recycling is perhaps the most telling detail of all. The information was vital, but the physical medium of its initial recording was disposable. It was the system that mattered, not the individual document. The data was extracted, and the clay, a valuable commodity, was reclaimed. It is a powerful metaphor for the entire civilization, pragmatic, efficient, and utterly focused on the collective need over the individual artifact. You look at the ledger, its surface covered in the day's compiled story of surplus and deficit, of intake and outflow. It is a snapshot of the city's metabolism, but it is a snapshot that raises a deeper question. This entire magnificent, intricate system of accounting, this language of administration that allows a city of tens of thousands to thrive, is entirely reliant on a shared understanding, on centuries of unbroken tradition. What would happen if that understanding were ever lost? If the meaning behind these scratches, so obvious to you, were to fade from memory? The system feels unshakable, as permanent as the baked bricks of the citadel. But as you place the ledger tablet aside to dry, you are surrounded by the ghosts of yesterday's transactions, dissolving in a jar of water, returning to mute, formless clay. The ledger tablet, now dry and awaiting its final firing, sits as the ultimate authority. It is the culmination of a day's labor, a week's planning, a season's harvest. It represents the flawless functioning of a system built on predictability and control. But a system is only as strong as the assumptions upon which it is built. And sometimes, the universe introduces variables that no set of scratches on clay can possibly account for. The change does not arrive with thunder or invasion. It arrives slowly, insidiously, like a gradual shift in the wind. You are in your alcove, preparing a new batch of clay, when you first hear the whispers from the foreman at the gate. The talk is of the river, the Indus, the life-giver, the source of all the water that feeds the irrigation channels, that water the fields, that fill the granaries you account for, is behaving. Oddly, the annual flood is the central pulse of your civilization. Its timing and volume are predictable. You plan the planting, the harvest, and your entire annual accounting cycle around it. But the whispers say the flood this year was lackluster, its waters barely reaching the second marker on the great gauging stones. The following year, the whispers grow more anxious. The flood is late, and when it comes, it is a furious, short-lived torrent that washes away some of the outer fields rather than gently irrigating them. It is followed by a long period of strangely low water levels. Your work becomes more complex. The tablets you inscribe now contain new, troubling symbols. The mark for blighted grain appears more frequently. The tallies for incoming shipments grow smaller. The ledgers show a steady, alarming decline in the surplus. The distributions to the public works projects are reduced, then halted. The allocations for the temple breweries a sign of true surplus and leisuresis entirely. Your accounting shifts from managing abundance to managing scarcity. You now inscribe tablets that are essentially rationing orders. The symbols for half measure and quarter measure become commonplace. The meticulous tallies are now exercises in subtraction and difficult choices. Do you feed the workers building the city's walls, or the priests maintaining the rituals believed to ensure the river's bounty? The elegant, boring logic of your administrative system is now strained by forces far beyond its design. You are recording the slow, inexorable contraction of your world. Then other whispers begin to circulate, carried by traders from Opperver. Stories of cities where the granaries are empty. Stories of people simply leaving, walking away from urban life and returning to a simpler, nomadic existence. The uniformity of the script, once the great strength of your civilization, begins to fray. You see tablets from other sectors that seem sloppier. The symbols are less precise, as if made by less trained hands. Some tablets appear with strange, new marks that you do not recognize. The shared language of administration is breaking down into regional dialects and then into incomprehensible gibberish. One day, you go to the granary complex and it is quieter than it should be. Fewer foremen arrive with reports. The rhythmic sound of grain pouring into bins is fainter. You look at the ledger from the same month 5 years prior. The page is filled with confident, deep tallies of abundance. The ledger you are about to start is a field of worried, shallow scratches denoting lack. You take a lump of clay and begin to roll it, a habitual, comforting motion. But your hands are shaking. You look at your stylus, your seals, your bowls of water and fresh clay. These tools have always been the instruments of order, the means by which chaos was transformed into comprehensible data. But now the chaos is winning. The data itself is becoming unbearable. What is the point of perfectly accounting for nothing? The climax of this story is not a dramatic collapse. It is the sound of silence. It is the moment you lay down your stylus for the last time. Perhaps there is no grain left to count. Perhaps there is no one left to report it. Perhaps the meaning behind the scratches has been lost even to you. You leave the unfired ledger tablet on the bench. You walk out of the small, shaded room, past the increasingly empty and into the streets of a city that is growing quieter every day. The civilization of the Indus Valley did not end in a fiery conquest. It faded. People simply left, and the complex system that required accountants, scribes, and centralized granaries could no longer be sustained. The cities were not destroyed. They were abandoned to the dust. Centuries later, archaeologists will find your ledger tablet and the few surviving transaction tablets that somehow escaped being recycled into sludge. They will see the precise, elegant scratches and recognize a sophisticated system. They will marvel at its uniformity and its clear purpose, but they will never be able to read it. The language died with the last scribe who understood its context. And so, the final thought-provoking reflection is this: our own world runs on data, on digital scratches, infinitely more complex, but perhaps just as fragile. We trust in systems, in networks, in the cloud. The story of the grain accountant reminds us that every system, no matter how brilliant or boring, is built upon a foundation of stability, ecological, social, and cultural. When that foundation shifts, the most perfect system in the world can be rendered mute, leaving behind only elegant, incomprehensible scratches, a permanent record of a temporary order, and a powerful testament to the fact that the most enduring mysteries are not about what was lost, but about how something so vast and organized could simply forget how to speak its own name. You are not in the Venice of sun-drenched piazzas and gondoliers' songs. You are in the Venice of the pre-dawn hours, in the sestiere of Cannaregio, far from the Piazza San Marco. The air here is different. It is heavy, not with the damp mist of the lagoon, but with the thick, cloying scent of boiling animal glue. It is a smell that clings to the back of your throat, a smell that seeps into the wool of your cloak, the linen of your shirt, and the very timber of the low-ceilinged workshop you now find yourself in. This is the laboratorio of a masherer, and for now, you are his apprentice. Your master is an old man named Luca. His back is permanently stooped from decades of hunching over his workbench. His hands, though gnarled and stained with pigment and glue, possess a preternatural steadiness. He is a cartonero, a maker of masks from cartapesta papier, MCH. This is not the most prestigious of trades. The true artists work with leather, porcelain, or even precious metals for the aristocracy. But Luca's masks are the backbone of Venetian society. They are the masks of the everyday citizen, the merchant, the clerk, the servant. They are the masks of anonymity. Your day begins in the near darkness. The first task is always the glue. Luca has a small, blackened pot hanging over a feeble flame in the corner of the workshop. Into it go the odd, translucent, amber-colored scraps he collects from the boat builders at the arsenal, the clippings and shavings from the hides used for rigging and seals. As they heat, they dissolve into a viscous, honey-thick liquid, releasing that potent, unmistakable odor. It is your job to stir it, slowly, constantly, with a long, worn wooden paddle. You must not let it boil, only simmer. A boiled glue becomes frothy and weak, losing its adhesive property. This is a lesson you learned only once, early on, and the memory of Luca's quiet, disappointed sigh was a more effective punishment than any shouted rebuke. While you tend to the glue, Luca prepares the forma, the mold. He has hundreds of them, lining the walls of the workshop, wooden forms carved with exquisite care into the blank, expressionless faces of the botta, the hooked nose of the medico della peste, the plague doctor, the delicate, feminine features of the moretta. He selects one, a classic volto, the simple, oval face mask that allows the wearer to eat and drink without removal. He dusts it with a fine powder of crushed limestone to prevent sticking dot. Not fine vellum or parchment, but the cheap, rough, gray, stratuliterally rags paper made from recycled hemp and linen fibers. You have spent the previous afternoon tearing this paper into thousands of precise, manageable strips, a monotonous task that left your fingertips rough and dry. Now, you bring a bowl of these strips to the bench. Luca dips the first one into the warm glue, running it through his fingers to scrape off the excess. With a practiced motion, he lays it onto the mold. Then another, and another. You join him. This is your primary duty, layering. Strip by strip, layer upon layer. The first few layers use the roughest paper, simply to build up the shape. The subsequent layers use slightly finer paper. There is no conversation. The only sounds are the soft hiss of the glue pot, the rustle of paper, the faint, sticky sound of a strip being pressed into place, and Luca's slow, measured breathing. You must ensure there are no air bubbles, no wrinkles. Each strip must overlap the last perfectly. A flaw now means a weak mask later, a waste of precious materials and time. You will do this for hours. The mask will require 15, sometimes 20 layers, depending on its intended use. A mask for a single night's revelry might be thinner. A mask for a merchant who wishes to conceal his identity for a season of business dealings will be thicker, more durable. The room grows warm from the glue pot's flame. The smell, once overpowering, begins to fade into the background of your awareness, becoming simply the smell of work as you work. Luca occasionally speaks, his voice a low rumble, almost like the sound of the water lapping against the fondamenta outside. He does not speak of grand things. He speaks of glue. He explains how the glue from autumn slaughtering is best, stronger, how the summer heat can spoil a batch if you are not careful. He tells you which paper merchant on the Rialto to trust, and which one to avoid because he mixes chalk dust into his pulp to add weight. This is the knowledge that matters. This is the boring, granular detail of a life lived in craft. Once the final layer is applied, the mask is set on a high shelf to dry. The drying is slow, natural. It cannot be hurried by the fire, or the mask will warp and crack. It must simply sit in the cool, damp air of Venice for a day, sometimes two. You will make perhaps a dozen masks this way in a single morning, a silent production line of anonymity. And as you place the last volto on the shelf, its blank, featureless face staring into the dimness of the workshop, you might finally allow your mind to wander. You might think of the lives these empty shells will soon inhabit, the secrets they will enable, the identities they will conceal, the crimes and the loves they will witness. This mask in your hand, still damp and smelling of glue, is nothing but layered paper. Yet soon it will become a part of a person, a second skin, a key to a world where the rules of society are suspended. Who will wear it? What will they do while hidden behind this face that you, the Cartanero's son, have built with your own hands, stripped by tedious strip? The masks have dried. The once pliable, glue-slick paper has hardened into a tough, leathery shell. They are no longer mere layers of pulp. They have taken on a permanence, a structural identity, but they are still crude, ugly things. Their surface is rough and fibrous, their color a mottled, dirty gray. They are the raw, unformed clay waiting for the artist's hand. This is where the true transformation begins. A process of concealment, so complete it will hide the very medium from which the mask is born. Luca brings the dried masks down from the shelf, one by one, placing them on the workbench with a soft, hollow thunk. The next stage is the sealing. He takes a pot of colla di isinglass, a glue made from the dried swim bladders of sturgeon. This is a clearer, purer substance than the strong-smelling animal glue, and it is painstakingly brushed over the entire interior and exterior of the mask. It soaks into the paper, reinforcing it, making it more resistant to the damp Venetian air and the sweat of a wearer's brow. You watch as the dull gray darkens momentarily where the brush passes, then returns to its matte finish as it dries, now sealed against the elements. Then comes the gesso. This is your task. You prepare it in a shallow dish, a fine white powder of gypsum, mined from the hills of the mainland, mixed with the same clear isinglass to form a thick, smooth, brilliant white paste. The consistency is crucial. Too thin, and it will not build up enough to smooth the rough paper. Too thick, and it will clump and obscure the delicate contours of the mask's features. Luca taught you to aim for the texture of fresh, dense cream, using a broad, soft bristled brush. You begin to apply the gesso. This is not a hurried process. It is a meditation. You lay on a thin, even coat, working the paste into every minute crevice, every tiny overlap of paper. You must ensure no stroke marks are left behind. Then, you set the mask aside to dry. Once dry, you feel the surface. It is smoother, but the ghost of the paper's texture still remains beneath your fingertips. So you sand it. With a piece of the finest dried shark skin, you rub the surface in gentle, circular motions. A fine white dust fills the air around you, coating your hands, your apron, the bench. It is a clean, dry, chalky smell, a welcome relief from the glue. You then apply another coat of gesso and another. Each coat is sanded back to a smoother finish. 3, 4, sometimes 5 times, you repeat this cycle of application, drying, and sanding. With each layer, the mask becomes less an object of paper and more an object of pure potential form. The fibrous texture vanishes. The uneven color is submerged. The mask becomes a blank, white, porcelain smooth shell. It is no longer cardapet. It is a pristine canvas. You run your thumb over the curve of a cheekbone you helped create. It is as smooth and featureless as an eggshell. The humble, laborious foundation of paper and common glue has been utterly erased. Hidden beneath the perfect, uniform whiteness. It is during this long, repetitive process of coating and sanding that Luca sometimes shares fragments of stories. He speaks not of his own life, but of the masks. He tells you of the time a volto he made was worn by a young woman to meet her lover, a man from a rival family. He tells you of the Medico della Pesta mask worn not during the carnival, but during an actual outbreak of fever, its long beak filled with herbs by a desperate physician. The masks, in his telling, are not inanimate objects. They are silent witnesses, vessels for the hopes, fears, and deceptions of the city. The mask does not change the person, he murmurs one afternoon, his eyes on your brushing technique. It only removes the obstacle of their face. It shows you who they truly are without the editing. He falls silent again, leaving you to ponder this. Once the final sanding is complete and the mask is a perfect, blinding white, the final preparatory step is the application of a thin layer of linseed oil. You rub it in with a soft cloth, a tiny amount at a time. This seals the gesso, creating a non-porous surface. It also gives the white surface a faint, warm luster. The mask is now ready. It sits on the bench, a thing of potential beauty and mystery. It is a ghost, a blank slate. It holds within its smooth curves the memory of the rough paper, the smell of the glue, the dust of the gesso, and the countless hours of silent, boring labor. But all of that is invisible now. All that remains is the perfect, expectant whiteness, and you cannot help but wonder what face will now be painted upon this perfect blankness. Will it be a comedic grin, a tragic frown, or the serene, empty smile of the botta? And once the face is applied, once the mask is complete and sold to a stranger, what will become of all that work, all those layers of hidden, tedious effort that lie beneath the final, beautiful facade? The blank, white mask offers no clues. It simply waits. You are not in Alexandria, the city of scholars and merchants. You are on Pharos, the island. And your world is not the bustling streets or the legendary library. but the interior of a stone giant. The air you breathe is thick with the smell of salt, smoke, and burning oil. A constant, low roar fills your ears, not the roar of a crowd, but the roar of a colossal fire, amplified and funneled by the brilliant geometry of the structure around you. You are a Pharos keeper, a slave to the great lighthouse, one of the crew responsible for ensuring that the most famous flame in the known world never, ever goes out. Your name is unknown. You might be a Greek, an Egyptian, a captured pirate, or a debtor sold into service. Your identity is irrelevant. Here, you are defined by your function. Your day is not measured in hours, but in tasks completed before the sun sets and your true work begins. The die shift starts with the ascent. The Lighthouse of Alexandria is not merely a tower. It is a tapering, three-tiered mountain of limestone and granite, perhaps 400 feet high. There are no stairs in the modern sense. Instead, a broad, spiraling ramp corkscrews its way up the interior, wide enough to allow a team of donkeys to climb, hauling the day's fuel massive bundles of dried olive wood and refined resinous pitch to the summit. You begin at the base, in the vast, square-shaped first level, a fortress in its own right where hundreds of your fellow workers and soldiers are garrisoned. The climb is your daily meditation. The ramp under your feet is worn smooth by countless footsteps and hoofprints. The light inside is dim, filtering through small, deep-set windows. The air is cool and smells of dust and stone. With each circuit around the central core, the world outside the windows changes. The busy harbor, the specks of ships, the sprawling white city, all slowly diminish, becoming a map laid out at your feet. The sound of the city fades, replaced by the hollow echo of your footsteps and the distant cry of gulls. Your muscles burn, your breath comes short, but this is a familiar pain, a constant in your life. Your first destination is not the very top, but the fuel store located just below the beacon chamber. Here, you check the wood, ensuring it is dry and properly stacked. You check the great amphory of oil, a backup fuel for the most desperate nights of storm. This is a ritual of inspection, a confirmation that the lifeblood of the flame is secure. Then, you climb the final. Narrow staircases, stark contrast to the grand ramp that leads to the heart of the miracle, the beacon chamber. The change is assaultive. The roar of the wind is tremendous here, whipping through the open arches. The smell of last night's ashes and half-burnt pitch is overwhelming. And in the center of the octagonal room sits the great Themiaterion, the fire brazier. It is a monstrous metal bowl, blackened and cracked from years of unimaginable heat. The day's most important task now begins: cleaning. The bronze and stone around the brazier are coated in a thick, greasy layer of soot and solidified pitch. This is your primary duty. You are a polisher, with buckets of vinegar and water, with bags of fine sand and abrasive pumice stone, and with piles of rags. You and your shift set to work. You scrub the curved bronze reflectors, the most secret and brilliant aspect of the lighthouse's design. These are not simple mirrors, but precisely curved parabolic surfaces designed to capture the chaotic light of the flame and project it outward into a focused beam. A film of soot diminishes their power. A perfect polish makes them lethal to the darkness. You scrub the marble floors, the walls, the interior of the windows. You carefully collect the ashes from the brazier, sifting through them for any unburnt fragments of wood or charcoal to be reused. This is hard, filthy, monotonous work. The soot gets into your lungs, your hair, under your fingernails. It stains your skin a gray-black that never fully washes away. You are not a celebrated engineer or a famous architect. You are a janitor for a godlike fire. But as you polish the final reflector, your rag moving in slow, circular motions until you can see the distorted reflection of your own soot-streaked face in the metal, you understand the profound significance of your boring labor. That gleam is not vanity. It is utility. It is salvation. The difference between a dim, smoky glow and a piercing sword of light that can be seen 30 miles out to sea is the difference between a ship finding safe harbor and being shattered on the rocks. It is the difference between a merchant's fortune being saved or lost at the very end of his journey. Your aching muscles and grimy hands are directly responsible for the safe passage of every vessel that approaches the capital of the Ptolemais. The sun begins to dip below the western horizon, painting the Mediterranean in hues of orange and purple. The final inspection is made. The brazier is clean, the reflectors gleam, the fuel is stacked and ready. You stand for a moment in the wind, looking out at the endless sea, soon to be plunged into an abyssal blackness. You have prepared the tool. Soon it will be time to unleash its power. But as you descend the long ramp back into the gloom of the tower's base, leaving the clean, windy summit behind, a single thought persists. The flame itself is fleeting, consuming its fuel in a matter of hours. It is the endless, boring, daily act of polishing that truly gives the light its strength. And you wonder, as you reach the bottom, your body tired and stained, what happens on a night when the polish is not perfect, when a film of grime remains, and the beam fails to reach a ship struggling in the darkness. The descent is a transition from the realm of preparation to the realm of execution. The world outside the deep-set windows is now a deep twilight blue, and the first stars are pricking through the veil of the sky. The temperature drops. The sounds from the city below change. The daytime bustle of commerce gives way to the more subdued noises of evening. But within the lighthouse, a new energy begins to hum. The day shift of polishers and haulers is leaving their work done. You are part of the night shift now, the keepers of the flame. Your work is just beginning. You do not go far. Your post for the night is in a chamber several levels below the beacon, a room filled with the steady, rhythmic sounds of machinery. This is the home of the clepsydrad, the water clock. It is a complex, multi-tiered device of ceramic pots and copper pipes. Its constant, dripping measure of time, the only thing that governs the night's relentless schedule. Time, here, is not abstract. It is measured in amphorae of oil and stacks of wood. It is the most precious commodity. A senior keeper, a man with a face leathered by years of wind and soot, is in charge of the clock. His sole duty is to watch the water level in the main reservoir. When it reaches a specific mark, he calls out in a clear, loud voice that echoes up the stone ramp. "Mark, this is your signal." At the call, you and another keeper begin to move. You are part of a relay team, the critical link between the timeless measure of the clock and the hungry fire above. Your task is fuel. You ascend the ramp to the intermediate storage chamber, where the dried wood and pitchers of supplemental oil are kept. You load a certain precise number of olive logs into a stout leather harness slung over your back. The weight is familiar, a burden you have carried 1,000 times. Then you begin the climb to the summit. The roar of the wind grows louder with every step. As you near the top, a new sound joins it, the low, hungry roar of the great fire itself. The beacon chamber is a place transformed from the clean, windswept space you left hours ago. It is now a vision of Hades, the fire, already towering several feet high in the great brazier, licks at the darkness. The heat is immense, a physical wall that pushes you back as you enter. The two keepers stationed here are silhouettes against the inferno, their faces shielded by heavy leather hoods. They move with a frantic, rhythmic purpose. You approach the fire, the heat searing your skin even from 10 feet away. You shrugged the harness from your back. One of the fire tenders sees you, gives a sharp nod. In a well-practiced motion, you swing the harness forward and, in a single, smooth action, toss the bundle of wood into the edge of the conflagration. There is a momentary sizzle as the resinous wood meets the flame, then a fresh wave of heat and a cascade of sparks as it catches. The tender immediately begins turning the new fuel into the heart of the fire with a long, iron poker, ensuring it burns evenly and brightly. There is no conversation. The wind and the fire are too loud. Communication is all done through gestures, through nods, through the shared understanding of a ritual performed countless times. You do not linger. Your job is to deliver and descend. As you turn to leave, you catch a glimpse out of one of the open arches. The beam from the reflectors you polished so meticulously hours ago is now a tangible thing. It is not a gentle glow. It is a solid, brilliant white blade cutting through the blackness of the sea, sweeping across the water as the tenders adjust the mirrors. It is alive. You descend back to the clock room. You have just enough time to take a drink of water, to wipe the sweat and soot from your brow before the next mark echoes from the water clock keeper, and you ascend again. This is your entire night, a constant, endless cycle. Ascend with fuel, face the inferno, descend, wait, ascend again. The number of steps in the ramp becomes a mantra in your head. The weight of the wood on your back is a constant. The call of Mark is the only punctuation in the long, dark sentence of the night. It is the most profoundly boring, repetitive, and physically exhausting work imaginable. There is no glory in it. You are a human piston in a vast stone engine, yet, during the brief moments at the summit, as you toss the wood into the flames, you sometimes see what the light reveals. Far below, on the ink-black sea, a tiny speck of orange's ship's lantern will suddenly be caught in the sweeping beam. For a moment, it is illuminated, revealed. You know that on that ship, a lookout has surely seen the beam, has called out to his captain, has taken a bearing. They are no longer lost. They are seen. The lighthouse does not guide them home like a handheld lamp. It simply tells them, with utter certainty, where the rocks are not. It defines the safe path by banishing the darkness around it, and this is the deeper context of your boring labor. You are not just feeding a fire. You are maintaining a promise. The Pharaoh Ptolemy II Philadelphus did not build this wonder for his own glory alone. He built it as a contract with every merchant sailor in the Mediterranean. The promise was this: come to my city, trade in my ports, and I will ensure that the last, most dangerous part of your journey is made safe. The lighthouse was the ultimate economic development tool, and you, the lowly fuel carrier, are the one ensuring that promise is kept night after night, mark after mark, log after log, dot as the night deepens and your body moves on pure muscle memory. A thought occurs to you. The fire is a devourer. It consumes the wood, the oil, the hours of your life. It is relentless and insatiable. The only thing that keeps its hunger from being pointless is the precise, boring, unending system of the water clock and the fuel relays. The brilliance of the light is entirely dependent on the monotony of the upkeep, and you cannot help but wonder as you hear the next mark and hoist another bundle onto your aching shoulders. What would happen if the rhythm were broken? If just one mark was missed, one relay failed, one night the devourer was not fed? How long would it take for that promise of safety to be broken and for the dark sea to reclaim its dominion? The night's rhythm is absolute. Mark, ascend. Feed the devourer. Descend, mark, ascend. Feed, descend. Your world has shrunk to this loop. The magnificent view, the existential weight of the promise you uphold it all fades into the background of sheer, grinding fatigue. Your shoulders are raw from the harness. Your eyes are stinging from sweat and smoke. Your lungs feel coated with a fine, abrasive ash. You are no longer a man. You are a function, a biological component of the stone and fire machine. The only thing that exists is the next mark, the next bundle of wood, the next searing ascent. And then it changes. It begins not with a sound, but with a feeling, a deep, low vibration that comes up through the soles of your feet, a subdoble groan from the very bones of the lighthouse. The stone giant, which has felt as permanent and unmovable as the continent itself, shudders. For a fraction of a second, the rhythm breaks. The water clock keeper's call is caught in his throat. Everyone in the chamber freezes, looking at one another, eyes wide in the flickering lamplight. What was that? A moment of silence hangs in the air, thick and heavy. Then, from high above, a new sound tears through the familiar roars of wind and fire. It is the sound of screaming, not human screams, but the agonized shriek of metal being stressed beyond its limits. The great bronze reflectors, expanded by the hellish heat of the fire for years, then contracted by the cool night wind, have finally succumbed to fatigue. A critical bracket, worn thin by countless cycles of heat and cool, has sheared off. The sound that follows is one of the most terrifying you will ever hear, the deep, resonant gong of a massive sheet of bronze twisting and crashing against the marble floor of the beacon chamber, followed by a terrifying shower of sparks and a sudden, violent shift in the light emanating from the summit. The steady, piercing beam, that solid white blade stutters, swings wildly across the sky like a decapitated head, and then falters. The rhythm is shattered. The machine is broken. Up, the senior keeper bellows, his voice cracking with a fear you have never heard before. The relentless discipline of the night evaporates into chaos. You take the steps 3 at a time, not with fuel, but with a desperate, terrified urgency. The heat that hits you at the top is no longer the organized heat of the brazier. It is a chaotic blast. One of the giant reflectors has fallen partly into the fire, its polished surface now a twisted, blackened ruin. The remaining reflectors are misaligned, their beautiful geometry destroyed. The fire still rages, but its light is now spilled uselessly, bouncing wildly around the chamber in a dizzying, infernal disco ball of light and shadow. It is a beast, blinded and enraged. There is no time for orders. There is only instinct. You grab the long iron poker, its end glowing red hot, and with others, you try to drag the collapsed reflector from the flames. The heat is unbearable. Your leather hood, the air reeks of burning metal and superheated stone. For hours, you fight the chaos. You contain the fire. You secure the broken metal. You work until your hands are blistered and your voice is hoarse from shouting over the wind. When the immediate danger is past, you stand there, panting in the ruined chamber. The sun is beginning to rise over the sea, but for the first time in generations, the light of the sun does not relieve the light of the Pharos. It extinguishes it. As the sky lightens, the feeble, scattered glow of your wounded beacon is rendered invisible. The great flame is doused for the day. You look out at the sea. The beam is gone. The promise is broken. And then you see them. 3 ships. They are far out, but they are not moving with purpose. They are hove to, drifting, waiting. They had been relying on the light to guide them through the final, treacherous approach to the harbor. Now, with the dawn, they will risk it, but their captains will be nervous, their soundings anxious. The safety you had provided for every single night of your service has been revoked in a single moment of structural failure. The climax is not the dramatic crash, but the quiet, dreadful aftermath. The slow, exhausted descent in the cold light of dawn. The sight of the broken bronze being examined by grim-faced engineers. The knowledge that tonight there will be no beam. It will take days, perhaps weeks, to recast the metal, to repair the stone, to restore the perfect alignment. For now, the lighthouse is just a very tall, very expensive tower. The story of the lighthouse keeper ends not with a grand finale, but with a profound realization of fragility. The mightiest wonders of humankind are not felled by armies, but by entropy, by the slow, boring, relentless wear of heat and cold, of wind and water, on metal and stone. The most sophisticated system, the water clocks, the fuel relays, the precise polishing is ultimately vulnerable to a single, unseen crack in a single, unimportant piece of hardware. And this leads to the final, thought-provoking reflection. We build systems to impose order on a chaotic world, lighthouses, granaries, scripts, masks. We believe in their permanence. We trust them. But the story of the Pharos reminds us that all systems are temporary. They are all maintained against the constant, grinding pressure of decay. Our own modern world, our power grids, our global networks, our digital clouds are the new lighthouses. They feel permanent, but they are just as vulnerable to a broken bracket, to a forgotten piece of knowledge, to the slow creep of entropy. The true lesson of the lighthouse is not about its brilliant light, but about the constant, boring, essential effort required to keep that light from being swallowed by the ever-patient dark. You are not in the grand halls of the great palace of Constantinople. You are in a workroom attached to it, a place both privileged and prison-like. The air is warm and unnaturally humid. thick with the smell of mulberry leaves and the faint, sweet, musty scent of living insects. The year is somewhere in the 6th century AD, and you are a Serikarios, a silk worker. But you are no ordinary weaver of imported yarn. You are part of the most jealously guarded state secret in the Roman Empire, the cultivation of silkworms. Your world is defined by a single, miraculous, and tedious creature, Bombyx mori, the mulberry silkworm. Your days are not measured by the calls of the water clock, but by the insatiable appetite of thousands of tiny, crawling mouths. Your identity is subsumed by your function, and your function is to serve the worms. The day begins before first light, with the gathering of the leaves. You are part of a group of women, for this work is almost exclusively women's work, escorted under guard to the imperial mulberry groves within the palace complex. The trees are not the fruit-bearing kind. They are the white mulberry, Morus alba, cultivated for one purpose alone. Its leaves are the only food the precious silkworms will eat. You must pick the leaves at a specific stage of tenderness, neither too young nor too old. You work quickly and silently, filling baskets with the deep green, slightly rough foliage. The guards say nothing. Their presence is a constant reminder that the trees are worth more than you are. Back in the Magnanary, the silkworm nursery, the real work begins. The room is long and warm, filled with the soft, constant sound of a million tiny jaws chewing. The worms are kept on wide, shallow trays stacked on wooden shelves. In their first stages, they are almost microscopic, black specks requiring painstaking care. Now, in their 4th instar, they are as long as your finger, pale, soft, and voracious. Your duty is feeding. You take the fresh leaves and shred them by hand into fine strips, then distribute them evenly over the trays. It is a task that requires a gentle touch. The worms are surprisingly delicate. A crushed worm is not just a loss of life. It is a loss of potential gold. The economic calculus is ever present. You must ensure every worm has access to food, but you must also not overwhelm them. You clean the trays of their tiny black droppings, euphemistically called frass. A monotonous and endless chore, for a clean environment prevents disease. And disease is the ever-present terror. A single sickness can wipe out an entire season's cohort, a financial and strategic disaster for the empire. This is the profound boredom of high-stakes biology. There is no artistry here, only relentless, meticulous husbandry. You are a farmer, but your livestock is absurdly fragile, and your crop is their own cocoons. The secret of silk had been held by the Chinese for over a millennium, a monopoly broken only by legend stories of Nestorian monks who smuggled silkworm eggs out of China in hollowed-out walking staves, bringing them to the Emperor Justinian. Whether true or not, the story underscores the value of what you tend. These worms are not animals. They are a geopolitical weapon, the key to breaking the Persian and Sassanid stranglehold on the silk trade. As you watch them eat, you observe the subtle signs. Their skin grows tight, their movement slows. They are preparing to molt, shedding their skin to grow larger. Each molt is a critical juncture. After the 4th molt, their appetite becomes truly monstrous, and you are constantly hauling baskets of leaves, your back aching, your fingers stained green. Then, almost abruptly, they stop. Their bodies become translucent, and they begin to wander. seeking a place to begin their final transformation. This is your signal. You place bundles of dry brush on the trays, providing frameworks for the worms to anchor their cocoons. And then you watch the miracle. Each worm begins to emit a thin, shimmering thread from 2 glands in its head, moving its head in a slow figure-8 pattern, enveloping itself in a continuous strand of raw silk that can be nearly a mile long. Over the next 2 to 3 days, the busy, eating creature vanishes, replaced by a silent, off-white, oval-shaped cocoon. You look at a finished cocoon, holding it in your palm. It is light, slightly rough, and seemingly inert, but inside, the pupa is undergoing its metamorphosis. This object, the product of weeks of your monotonous labor, is worth its weight in silver. Yet, it is also a tomb. For the silk to be harvested, the pupa inside must be killed, usually by steaming or boiling the cocoons, to prevent it from maturing into a moth and breaking the precious, continuous thread. You are the guardian of a secret that fuels an empire's economy and prestige. But as you place the cocoon back with the others, you cannot help but wonder. You have nurtured this life from a speck, fed it, cleaned up after it, only to ultimately destroy it for the thread it produced. Is this an act of creation, or merely a long, drawn-out harvest? And what does it mean that the most luxurious fabric in the world, worn by emperors and patriarchs, begins its life here, in this humid, leafy-smelling room, in the care of women whose names history will never record? The atmosphere in the Magnanary has shifted. The constant, rustling sound of chewing has ceased, replaced by a profound, waiting silence. The trays are no longer fields of crawling life, but collections of pale, delicate ovals, each one a sealed tomb holding a secret. The air remains warm, but the humidity is now laced with a new, more ominous scent, the smell of steam and hot, wet silk. The next stage of the process is both the most critical and the most grim. The cocoons must be harvested, and to do so, the pupae inside must be killed. If allowed to mature, the moth would secrete a fluid to dissolve a hole in the cocoon and emerge, breaking the long, continuous filament into hundreds of short, useless fibers. The entire, tedious effort of weeks would be ruined. The value of the cocoon is in its unbroken thread, and that thread demands a sacrifice. You are now in a different part of the imperial workshops, a steamy, hellish room dominated by large, shallow bronze kettles set over fires. Your task is reeling. You bring baskets of the perfect, unblemished cocoons to the kettle tenders. They submerge them in vats of almost boiling water. The hot water serves 2 purposes. It kills the pupa inside, and it softens the saracen, the natural gum that binds the silk filament into the cocoon's structure. The smell is peculiar, a mix of cooking protein and the unique, slightly sweet scent of wet silk. It is a smell that clings to your clothes and hair, a permanent marker of your trade. As the cocoons bob in the hot water, the tender uses a small, whisk-like broom to stir them. The loose outer filaments, too fine and tangled to be reeled, catch on the broom, finding a common point. This is the beginning. She finds the end of a single filament from several cocoons, usually 5 to 8, tanned, deftly threads them together through a guide eye onto a large, horizontal reel. This is the heart of the operation. The reel begins to turn, slowly and steadily, pulled by a water wheel or patient donkey power in a nearby room. As it turns, it draws the impossibly fine filaments from the softening cocoons in the water. You watch, mesmerized, as always. The individual filaments, each one barely visible, are wound together into a single, stronger thread. The Saracen gum, still soft from the hot water, acts as a binding agent, fusing them as they dry on the reel. This is reeling, not spinning. There is no twisting of fibers. It is the simple, mechanical drawing out of a continuous, natural filament, a process unchanged for millennia. The thread that forms is raw silk, its natural gum still intact, giving it a stiff, slightly coarse feel. It is a pale, shimmering gold in color, the color of the cocoon itself. Your job is to tend this process. You must ensure the water temperature remains constant. Too hot, and the silk becomes brittle. Too cool, and the gum won't soften enough. You must constantly add new cocoons to the vat, their filaments fully drawn out, leaving behind the small, dark, shriveled pupa to be scooped out and discarded, sometimes to be eaten by the poor. A grim protein supplement. You must watch the thread on the reel for any breaks or imperfections, swiftly splicing in a new filament if one snaps. It is hot, steamy, monotonous work. The constant fog condenses on the stone walls. Your hands are perpetually pruned from the moisture. The rhythmic, turning reel becomes a hypnotic drone. You are no longer a nurturer of life. You are an operator in a factory of transformation, turning biological units into economic units. This raw silk, now wound onto large skeins, is the foundation of the Byzantine Empire's wealth. It is the product du jour of the imperial monopoly. Private citizens are forbidden from cultivating silkworms under penalty of death. All raw silk flows into the state-run gymnasium, the vast workshop where the next transformation will occur. The value is immense. It is a currency as reliable as gold solidi, used in diplomatic gifts to impress barbarian kings, in payments to mercenaries. In trade for the goods the empire cannot produce, as you handle the newly reeled skeins, feeling their slight stiffness and seeing their soft luster. You understand the chain you are a part of. You have seen the journey from leaf to larva, from larva to cocoon, and now from cocoon to thread. The boring, repetitive tasks of feeding, cleaning, boiling, and reeling are the unglamorous engines of an industry that defines an empire. The luxury that will adorn the emperor and his court, the priests and the aristocracy, begins here, in this steamy, smelly room. With your pruned fingers ensuring the threads remain unbroken. But a thought persists as you watch the endless turning of the reel. The thread is strong, but the system feels fragile. It is all based on a secret that is no longer entirely secret, on a biological process vulnerable to disease, and on a monopoly enforced by fear. The skein of silk in your hand represents power, but it is a power built on a foundation of carefully controlled knowledge and relentless, boring labor. What would happen, you wonder, if the secret escaped these palace walls? If the knowledge of the worm and the tedious art of reeling its thread were to find its way to other lands, other looms, would the empire's golden thread unravel? The raw silk, now reeled into heavy, gleaming skeins, is taken from your steamy domain. It is carried by silent, efficient servants into the heart of the gymnasium, the imperial weaving workshop. This is where your part of the process ends, and where the final, most visible transformation occurs. But you sometimes catch glimpses. The air there is different, filled with the rhythmic clatter of looms, the softer shush of shuttles, and the low, concentrated murmur of weavers, not the humid silence of biology or the hiss of steam. They are the artists. You were the agriculturalist, the first-step manufacturer. They will turn your strong, plain thread into tissues of unimaginable luxury, patterns of purple and gold, intricate scenes of hunting and mythology. Textiles, so valuable, they are listed in imperial inventories alongside jewels and relics. Yet, the true climax of this story is not happening at the looms. It is not in the creation of a magnificent loros for the emperor. It is happening slowly, inexorably, in the very nature of the secret you help maintain. The monopoly, for all its power, contains the seeds of its own dissolution. The system is too perfect, too valuable, and too boring not to be stolen. The first cracks are small, almost invisible. A trusted official, deep in debt, sells a single ounce of viable silkworm eggs to a Syrian merchant for a chest of gold. A disgruntled dye master, lured by promises of wealth and freedom, flees Constantinople, not just with the formulas for purple, but with the foundational knowledge of sericulture tucked away in his memory. The monks who first smuggled the secret into the empire are now followed by others smuggling it out. The knowledge leaks not in a torrent, but in a slow, persistent drip, carried by the very trade routes the monopoly was designed to control. The Byzantine response is to tighten control, to make the laws more draconian, the punishments more severe. The borders of the empire become not just military frontiers, but intellectual ones. But it is a futile effort. You cannot put walls around an idea, especially one as profitable as this. The knowledge of the silkworm begins to spread westwards, first to the Islamic world, where it is embraced and perfected, and then, centuries later, to Italy. The climax is not a dramatic battle or a sudden collapse. It is a slow, economic fading. The imperial silk workshops of Constantinople continue to produce the finest silks in the world for centuries, their quality unmatched. But they are no longer the only source. The market slowly, inevitably, diversifies. Lucchese and Venetian silks, woven from worms fed on Italian mulberries, begin to appear. They are perhaps not as fine at first, but they are available, and they are cheaper. The Byzantine monopoly on the raw material is broken. The empire's most powerful economic weapon is blunted. The story of the Byzantine silk spinner does not end with the fall of Constantinople in 1453. It ends much earlier and much more quietly. It ends the moment the first successful silkworm egg is hatched outside the control of the imperial gynecium. It ends with the realization that no system, no matter how rigidly enforced, can forever contain knowledge that has tangible, universal value. The most guarded secret in the world became, through the relentless pressure of human greed and curiosity, merely technical information. And this leads to the final, thought-provoking reflection. We live in an age of intellectual property, of digital monopolies, of patents and state secrets fiercely protected. We believe in the power of controlling information. The story of the Byzantine silk monopoly is an ancient lesson in the inevitable failure of such control. The very act of creating something of immense value, whether it is a silk thread, a software code, or a scientific formula generates immense pressure for that value to be shared, copied, and spread. The boring, meticulous work of the spinner. Once the foundation of an empire's power became, through the slow leak of knowledge, just a job. The true legacy of those unnamed women in the humid Magnanary is not the preservation of a secret, but a demonstration that all monopolies, no matter how powerful, are ultimately temporary. They are all, like the silk thread itself, subject to the constant unraveling forces of time and human nature. You are not riding a horse. You are not a daring young rider risking your life against desert and Sioux war party. You are at a way station, not one of the major home stations, but a relay station, a lonely, crude outpost consisting of a low sod-roofed hut, a small corral, and a well. The year is 1860. The place is somewhere on the vast, empty plains of the Nebraska Territory, or perhaps the arid stretches of Utah. Your world is not defined by speed and adventure, but by waiting. You are a stock tender for the Pony Express, and your existence is a monument to anticipation. The air you breathe is dust. Fine, alkaline, pervasive dust that gets in your teeth, your eyes, the folds of your clothes. It smells of dry grass, horse sweat, and your own loneliness. The sounds are the low sigh of the wind across endless miles of grass, the buzz of flies, the occasional snort or stamp of a horse in the corral. For hours, sometimes days, that is all there is. Your job is simple, and its simplicity is its own form of torture. You are responsible for two things, the horses and the rider's kit. You care for a string of 5 or 6 Mustangs and ponies, tough, wiry animals, bred for endurance and speed over short distances. Your day is spent mending the corral fence, drawing water from the well if you have one, brushing down the animals, and checking their shoes. It is repetitive, physical, and mind-numbingly dull. You know every individual hair on every horse's back. You have named them, talked to them, because there is no one else to talk to. The other part of your duty is preparation. Inside the hut, on a rough-hewn table, sits the mosila. This is the heart of the entire enterprise. It is a square of stiff leather, a sort of fitted cover that goes over the saddle. At each of its 4 corners is a cantina, a hard leather box that is locked. 3 of these boxes contain the mail the precious, incredibly expensive letters that are speeding from St. Joseph, Missouri to Sacramento, California in the promised 10 days. The 4th box is for the way bills and other company documents. The weight of the mosila, fully loaded, is a little over 20 pounds. It feels heavier. It contains the hopes of a nation trying to stay connected, the business of a continent, the personal news of thousands of people. Your task is to have a fresh horse saddled and ready at all times. The saddle is a lightweight, specific thing, designed for speed and to accept the mohila. When you hear the signal, the distant, faint drumming of hooves, 2-minute ballet of efficiency, you dash to the corral, rope your fastest, freshest horse, and throw the saddle on its back. You tighten the cinch, your hands moving by pure instinct. You lead the horse out to the station marker, your heart pounding, not from fear, but from the sudden, violent interruption of the endless waiting. You see the rider then, a speck growing into a storm of motion and sound. He arrives in a cyclone of dust, sweat, and flying hooves. He doesn't even truly stop. As his lathered, heaving horse slows, he is already swinging his leg over. He hits the ground running. Yanking the mosla from his saddle in one fluid motion, he throws it over the saddle of the fresh horse you are holding. You might exchange 2 words. How's trail? Dry, or you might exchange none. There is a click as the mosila settles into place. He is in the saddle in a single, practiced leap. You slap the horse's rump, and he is gone. The entire exchange has taken less than 2 minutes. The whirlwind of noise and action vanishes over the next rise, and the silence crashes back down, deeper and more profound than before. And you are left with the exhausted horse, its sides heaving, its coat white with lather. You take it, calm it, walk it slowly to cool it down, then brush it, water it, and feed it, and then you return to waiting. The excitement was not yours. It was a fleeting energy that passed through your stationary world, leaving you once again alone with the dust and the wind. You are the absolute foundation of the Pony Express. Without you and the other tenders at these lonely outposts, the entire system collapses. The daring riders are the flash and romance, but you are the punctuation, the constant, reliable, and utterly boring comma in the long run-on sentence of the 1,900-mile route. Your courage is not of the moment, but of endurance. The courage to face the soul-crushing emptiness, the isolation, the threat of harsh weather or hostile encounters, all for a 2-minute burst of purpose every day or so. As you sit on a stump outside the hut, watching the empty horizon, the recently arrived horse cropping grass contentedly nearby, you look at the mosila, now sitting silent on your table until the next eastbound rider comes through. It is just a piece of leather and brass, but it contains worlds. You wonder, as the sun dips below the impossibly flat horizon, what news it carries. What fortunes are being made or lost based on the information speeding inside those locked boxes? And what would it be like to be the one waiting for it, instead of the one merely facilitating its passage? The waiting is not empty. There is a protocol, a bureaucracy even here, at the edge of nothing. After the adrenaline of the exchange fades, and the spent horse is cooled, brushed, and settled in the corral, you have a duty. You take the way bill from the 4th cantina of the mosila, the one that is not locked, the one meant for the company's eyes only. This is your tether to the larger system, your proof that you are part of something beyond this sod hut and these few acres of dust. Inside the hut, at your small table, you light a grease lamp. The light flickers, throwing monstrous, dancing shadows on the rough walls. You open the leather-bound ledger. This is the record of the run. The previous rider, the one who just left, will have already made his entry at the last home station. You now add yours. With a steel nib pen and a small pot of ink that constantly threatens to thicken in the dry air, you make your marks. The entry is a study in minimalism. The date, the time of arrival, the time of departure, the condition of the horse he arrived on, lathered, spent, lame, left for, the identification number of the horse you gave him, paint number 3, your name or station number, that is all. There is no space for commentary on the weather, the state of the trail, or the look. The company wants data, not drama. The ink stains your fingers, a badge of your small but vital administrative role. This act of record-keeping is perhaps the most profound symbol of the enterprise. The Pony Express was a private business, a desperate, audacious gamble by the firm of Russell, Majors, and Waddell to win a government mail contract and prove the Central route was viable. It was built on logistics and accounting as much as on horseflesh and courage. Every ounce of weight mattered, every minute counted, and every penny had to be tracked. Your tiny, ink-stained entry in this ledger is a data point in a massive financial calculation, a calculation that was, though you couldn't know it, rapidly hurtling toward bankruptcy. You close the ledger. The mochila sits on the table. The 3 locked cantinas hold their secrets. This is the closest you get to the romance of the thing. You are the guardian of the mail. In your care, however briefly, are love letters heading to California goldfields, business proposals from San Francisco merchants, newspaper reports from New York, and legal documents that could decide the fate of thousands of acres of land. The weight of it is immense, yet it is utterly inert. You cannot touch the contents. You are not permitted to try to open the brass locks. You are simply a waypoint, a temporary repository. This is the deep, central irony of your existence. You are at the heart of the fastest communication system the world has ever known. Yet you are utterly isolated, completely in the dark. News of Lincoln's election, of battles fought, of fortunes won and lost, passes through your hands, but you will be the last to know any of it. The information is frozen, locked in leather and brass, racing past you at 10 miles an hour. You are a node in a network, but the information does not flow to you. It flows through you. Your world is one of sensory deprivation and informational starvation, punctuated by moments of intense, focused activity. The boredom is a physical presence, a weight on your chest. To fight it, you fall into rituals. You clean your saddle for the 10th time. You count the fence posts. You watch the horizon until your eyes ache. You listen so intently for the sound of hooves that you begin to hear it in the wind. A constant auditory mirage that keeps you perpetually on edge. The context of your boring vigil is the sheer, unimaginable scale of the enterprise. The Pony Express was a string of 190 stations, roughly every 10 to 15 miles across the continent, each one staffed by men like you, living in identical isolation, performing the same 2-minute ballet of the horse change. The continuity of the run relied on every single one of you being there, being ready, every single time. A single station unattended, its tender sick, scared away, or dead could break the chain, adding hours of delay as a rider was forced to push his tired mount to the next station. Your individual task was weibuzudalda, insignificant, but your collective reliability was everything. As night falls and the darkness becomes absolute, broken only by your small lamp, you look at the locked mochila. It is a coffin for news, a sealed capsule hurling through the darkness. You are its temporary guardian, and you cannot help but wonder, as the coyotes begin to sing in the distance, what would happen if you simply weren't here? If the loneliness finally won, and you walked away from this post, how long would it take for the system to fail? The rider would arrive to an empty station, a dark hut, no fresh horse. The promise of 10 days would be broken, not by a spectacular Indian attack or a blizzard, but by the simple, boring, human inability to endure the wait. The days and nights blur into a continuous cycle of waiting, brief violence of action, and more waiting. You have grown accustomed to the language of the horizon, reading the approach of a rider by the specific plume of dust he kicks up. You know your horses so well you can sense their restlessness before a storm. The ledger's pages fill, one nearly identical entry after another. The Pony Express, against all odds, is working. The 10-day promise is being met, a miracle of logistics and human endurance. The nation marvels at the riders. You marvel at the fact that the flour hasn't run out and that the well hasn't gone dry. Then the rhythm changes. The riders begin to talk, not just of trail conditions, but of news. They speak in short, breathless sentences during the 2-minute change. They speak of tensions back east, of something about a fort, of talk of war. The news is fragmented, confused, racing along with the mail itself. The Mosilla feels heavier. It no longer carries just business and personal letters. It carries the tremors of a coming earthquake. You are still isolated, but now you are isolated with a dread you cannot name. Weeks pass. Then, one day, a rider arrives from the east, but he is not his usual frantic self. He slows his horse to a walk as he approaches the station. His face is grim, etched with a new kind of fatigue. He doesn't leap off. He dismounts, slowly, wearily. He doesn't immediately throw the Instead, he looks at you, really looks at you, as if seeing another human being for the first time. "It's over," he says, his voice hoarse. The words don't make sense. "What's over?" you ask, your hand still on the bridle of the fresh horse you'd let out. "They're shutting it down, finished," he explains, in short, exhausted bursts. The telegraph, the transcontinental telegraph line, is completed. Messages can now fly from Omaha to Sacramento in minutes, not days. The Pony Express, the audacious, glorious, bankrupt enterprise, is instantly obsolete. The last run is being made right now. He is one of the final riders. The company has lost a fortune. Russell, Majors, and Waddell are ruined. He performs the change for the last time at your station. The throw of the mochila, the leap into the saddle, is funereal now, not urgent. He rides west, not to beat the clock, but to simply complete the obligation. You are left standing there, holding the bridle of the horse you had ready, watching him disappear into the dust for the last time. The climax is not a celebration or a catastrophe. It is the sound of silence. But this silence is different. It is permanent. You know, with a certainty that settles in your bones, like the cold of a prairie winter, that no rider will ever come again. The waiting is over. There is nothing left to wait for in the days that follow. Official word comes, not by rider, but by a slow-moving freight wagon carrying a company man. He confirms it. He gives you your final pay-up. He collects the company ledger, the unused waybills, and most significantly, the mochila. You watch him drive away with it. The symbol of your purpose, the object around which your entire existence had revolved for months, is gone. You are left alone at the way station. The corral still holds a few horses. The hut is still stocked with some beans and flour. But the reason for it all has vanished. The nerve center of the fastest communication in the world has been rendered a useless, lonely shack in the middle of an ocean of grass, killed by an invisible signal flying over your head on wooden poles you've never seen. The story of the Pony Express clerk does not end with a ride into the sunset. It ends with the quiet realization of technological obsolescence. You were part of a system that was the pinnacle of human and animal speed, a system that pushed the limits of endurance, only to be made irrelevant by the cool, silent, instantaneous magic of electricity. Your boredom, your vigilance, your ink-stained entries in the ledger roll of it was rendered historical footnote in the space of a single day. And this leads to the final, thought-provoking reflection. We live in our own age of breathtaking technological change, where systems and jobs we consider vital are rendered obsolete overnight by new software, new AI, new platforms. The story of the waystation tender is a testament to the human cost of progress. It reminds us that behind every disrupted industry are people whose purpose is suddenly erased, whose skills are no longer needed, who are left standing alone on a metaphorical prairie, watching the world change without them. The Pony Express was a glorious, fleeting dream, but its true legacy is not the romance of the ride, but the quiet dignity of those who waited, maintained, and kept the system running until the very moment it was no longer needed. Their boring, essential work ultimately swallowed by the relentless, silent advance of the wire. You are not in the famous huts where codebreakers wrestle with Enigma machines. You are in a different building altogether. A converted stable block or a tucked-away annex at Bletchley Park. The year is 1942. The air is warm, thick with the smell of hot metal, ozone, and dust. A constant, low-pitched 60-cycle hum vibrates through the floorboards and settles in your teeth. This is the valve room, and you are a valve tester. Your war is not fought with equations or crossword puzzles, but with a soldering iron, and a seemingly endless supply of glass vacuum tubes. Your world is a small, well-lit workbench, one of dozens lined up in rows in this long, noisy room. Before you sits the heart of the entire Bletchley operation, the valve or vacuum tube. They are everywhere in the Colossus, the world's first programmable digital computer, now being built in another hut. In the countless radio receivers, listening to the encrypted German traffic. In the complex bomb machines that whir and click, trying to find the daily Enigma settings. Without these valves, the entire nerve center of Allied intelligence is blind, deaf, and dumb, and it is your job to ensure they work. The valves arrive at your station in wooden crates, hundreds of them sourced from every manufacturer in Britain and America. They are all different, yet they all look vaguely the same. Glass bulbs of various sizes, with a complex filigree of metal plates and grids suspended inside, and a series of pins protruding from the base. To the uninitiated, they are inert, mysterious objects. To you, they are individuals, each with their own personality and flaws. Your tool is the valve tester, a heavy, complex piece of equipment with a dial-covered face, a series of switches, and a socket for the valve's pins. Your procedure is methodical, a ritual repeated hundreds of times a day. You take a valve from the crate. You wipe the glass clean of dust and fingerprints. You carefully, ever so carefully, insert its pins into the correct socket. You flip the switches to apply specific voltages to the different elements inside the valve, the heater, the cathode, the grid, the anode. You watch the meters. The needle on the main dial should swing to a specific value, indicating the valve's amplification factor rates, mu. This number must be within a very tight tolerance. A valve that is even slightly weak will not amplify the signal cleanly, introducing noise and errors into the delicate calculations of the code-breaking machines. A valve that is gassy, meaning its vacuum is imperfect, will behave unpredictably, conducting current where it shouldn't. A valve with a short circuit between its internal elements is utterly useless. You classify each one. You stamp a tiny coded mark on its glass envelope with a grease pencil, a check for good, a cross for reject, a special symbol for a valve that is weak but might be usable in a less critical circuit. The rejects go into a bin to be returned. Their internal parts might be salvaged. The good valves go into a different, padded crate destined for the machines. The work is hypnotic, repetitive, and of paralyzing importance. A single faulty valve installed in Colossus could mean a wrong calculation, a lost hour of processing time, a cipher setting missed. The pressure is immense, but it is a quiet, constant pressure, expressed only in the intense focus of your eyes on the dancing needle of the meter. This is the profound, hidden boredom of the secret war. While the cryptanalysts in Hut 6 wrestle with intellectual puzzles, your battle is against entropy and poor quality control. You are a gatekeeper. You are ensuring the physical, electrical integrity of the tools that make the intellectual breakthroughs possible. The hum of the room is the sound of the war effort itself, a constant, draining draw on the national grid, all to keep these thousands of glass bulbs glowing, these millions of electrons flowing in the precise paths required as you place a perfectly tested valve into the good crate. You handle it with a strange reverence. This small, fragile object, this product of your boring, meticulous work, will soon be plugged into a machine that might help break the U-boat codes in the North Atlantic, or the Luftwaffe signals over the Channel. Its perfect performance might, in some infinitesimal way, help shorten the war. But as you reach for the next unknown valve from the crate, its fate and quality a mystery, you cannot help but wonder, what if your focus lapses? What if your meter is slightly miscalibrated? What if you let a weak valve slip through? How far would that tiny electrical flaw ripple through the vast, secret machine of Bletchley Park? The rhythm of testing is absolute. Insert, switch, watch, the needle mark. Remove the pile of rejected valves. Grows the gassies, the weaklings, the shorts. They're tiny. Internal failures are a catalogue of miniature disasters. Each one is a betrayal of purpose. The good valves, with their precise, satisfying meter swings, are lined up in their padded crate like soldiers past fit for duty. Your world has shrunk to the 80-inch radius of your workbench, the glow of the tester's dials, and the 60-cycle hum that seems to vibrate your very soul. But you are not just a quality control technician. You are a diagnostician. The senior engineers, the men who design and maintain the colossal bombs and the terrifyingly complex Colossus, rely on your logs. When a machine in Hut 11 or the Numenry develops a fault twin, its calculations become erratic. When it spews out nonsense, their first question is not to the mathematicians. It is to you. They arrive at your bench, their hands stained with oil and their faces tight with frustration, carrying a faulty valve pulled from a sick machine. This one was from batch 7 no 2, they might say, placing the offending tube on your bench. came out of bomb Agnes, started giving inconsistent readings on the third drum setting. What can you tell me? This is where your boring work becomes a forensic science. You take the suspect valve. You test it, but now you are not looking for a simple pass, fail. You are looking for its signature. You run it through a more rigorous series of tests, applying different voltages, watching how the needle behaves not just at its peak, but as it climbs and falls. A perfectly good valve responds predictably. A faulty one has a story to tell. A valve that fails only under high load might indicate a cathode that is wearing out, unable to emit enough electrons when stressed. A valve that shows a slight fluctuating current might have a microscopic crack, letting in a trace of air that ionizes and creates an unstable path. You are listening to the valve speak its failure, translating its electrical stutter into a diagnosis. You log your findings in a separate, more detailed ledger. Batch 702. Valve number C8843. Intermittent short between grid and anode, under 250 volts load. Probable cause, whisker growth. This information is gold. It tells the engineers not just that a valve failed, but how and why. It allows them to trace the fault back to a specific manufacturing batch, perhaps from a specific factory where quality control had a lapse. It might help them redesign a circuit to be more tolerant of a common failure mode. Your meticulous, repetitive testing at this bench is building a vast, hidden database of failure analysis that is making the entire Bletchley operation more robust, one valve at a time. The context of your work is the sheer, unimaginable scale of the machine you are feeding. The bomb machines each contained miles of wiring and over 100 valves. Colossus, the Leviathan, used an astonishing 1,500. And there were dozens of these machines, running 24 hours a day, their valves glowing hot, stressed to their limits. They burned out constantly. Your work was not a one-time event. It was a continuous cycle of replacement and renewal. The code-breaking effort was literally built on the constant, boring process of identifying and swapping out these fragile components. The war in the Atlantic, the air war over Europe, was being won not just by ideas, but by the relentless replacement of burnt-out glass tubes. As you hand the diagnosed valve back to the engineer, your findings noted, you feel a small, quiet sense of contribution. You have not broken a code, but you have fixed a machine that will. The pressure is immense, because the machines cannot stop. Every minute a bomb is down is a minute of lost time against the German U-boat commands. A minute that could cost a convoy of ships and thousands of lives. Your focus cannot waver. Your eyes cannot grow tired of watching the needle. The hum of the room is the sound of the war's urgency, and your bench is one of its most critical listening posts. Yet, as you return to the endless crate of new, unknown valves, a thought persists. You are finding the flaws, diagnosing them, weeding them out. But you are only one person. What if a flaw is too subtle for your tester to catch? What if a batch of valves has a latent weakness that only appears after 100 hours of continuous operation? The machines are a chain of thousands of these components, each one a potential point of failure. The entire monumental effort of Bletchley Park, the genius of Turing and his colleagues, rests on the electrical perfection of these glass bulbs you hold in your hand, and you cannot help but wonder if you are truly catching every single flaw, or if, somewhere deep in the complex guts of Colossus, a valve with a hidden weakness is waiting to fail at the most critical possible moment. The hum is eternal. The crates are endless. The needle on the meter dances its precise dance, over and over, a hypnotic ritual performed thousands of times a day. You have become a machine yourself, an extension of the tester, your eyes and hands serving its relentless demand for data. The war outside is a distant rumor, a thing of headlines and radio broadcasts that feels less real than the immediate, tangible reality of a good valve versus a bad one. You know your work is important, but its impact is abstract, locked away in the secret huts you rarely see. Then, one day, the rhythm changes. It doesn't stop, but it shifts. The senior engineers, usually so harried and focused, are moving through the valve room with a different energy. There is a lightness to their step, a slight, almost imperceptible easing of the tension in their shoulders. They speak in lower tones, but their words are not about frustrations with batch 712 or a persistent short in bomb, Victoria. They are talking about the traffic, the U-boat traffic. The whispers reach your bench, passed along with a newly rejected valve or a request for a specific type of tube. The whispers say the machines are working better, faster, that the brakes are coming more quickly, that the encrypted signals from the German wolf packs in the North Atlantic are being read almost as quickly as the Kriegsmarine commanders themselves. The whispers speak of convoys rerouted, of U-boats found and sunk, of tonnages saved. The work in the huts is yielding tangible, world-altering results. You are not told this officially. You are a valve tester. You have no need to know, but you hear it, and you understand with a dawning, profound clarity that the fruits of the intellectual labor in those huts are harvested through the electrical perfection of the valves you test. Every clean, strong signal amplified by your good valves allows Colossus to calculate faster. Every unstable, rejected valve you weed out is a potential crash averted, an hour of precious processing time saved. Your boring, repetitive, eye-straining work is quite literally providing the clear signal through which the secrets of the enemy are being heard. The climax of your story is not a dramatic event. It is a quiet, internal realization. It is the moment you pick up a valve from a new crate, wipe its glass surface clean, and plug it into the socket, and you understand that this small glass and lattice object is not just a component. It is a vessel. It contains, within its vacuum, the potential for victory or defeat. Its flawless operation might contribute to the intelligence that saves a ship, a crew, a cargo of food and fuel destined for a besieged Britain. Your perfect focus on its electrical characteristics is an act of war, as vital as manning an anti-aircraft gun. The war ends. The constant, draining hum of the valve room ceases. The frantic deliveries of crates stop. The orders for specific valves are cancelled. The secret is kept. You are sworn to the official Secrets Act, and you will keep that oath for decades. You pack up your tools. You leave Bletchley Park. There are no parades for the valve testers, no medals. Your contribution is classified, folded into the vast, unknowable whole of the ultra-secret. You return to a normal life, in a normal job. the world celebrates the pilots, the soldiers, the sailors. The story of Bletchley Park itself will only emerge slowly decades later, and it will be a story of brilliant codebreakers and fantastic machines. Your name will never be in any history book. No one will ever ask you about the war, and this is the final, thought-provoking reflection. The story of the valve tester is the story of the absolute foundation of modern technological endeavor. For every brilliant innovator, for every celebrated genius, there are hundreds, thousands of individuals doing the boring, meticulous, and essential work of making that brilliance possible. They are testing the components, writing the lines of code, manufacturing the chips, laying the cables. Their work is invisible when it functions perfectly. It is only noticed in its absence, in failure. The victory at Bletchley was not just a victory of intellect. It was a victory of system, of organization, of countless tiny acts of mundane excellence. It teaches us that the most complex and world-changing achievements are built on a pyramid of boring, reliable labor. In our own age of artificial intelligence and quantum computing, we marvel at the algorithms and the theorists, but we should also remember the unseen army, ensuring the servers are cool, the code is clean, the power is stable, the modern-day valve testers, whose perfect, boring work allows the magic to happen. Their victory, too, is unseen, but it is no less real. And so, we return from our journey through the quiet corners of history. We leave behind the dust of the waystation, the gleam of the polished reflector, the silent, waiting Mosila. The hands we followed are now still. Their work, whether forgotten or celebrated, is complete. But the world they built through their patience, their precision, and their resilience remains all around us. It is in the systems we rely on, the comforts we enjoy, the very connections that bind us together. They remind us that history is not only made in grand moments, but in the accumulation of a million small, diligent acts, that a life of quiet purpose is a life well lived, that there is profound meaning to be found in the meticulous care of a thing, however small. The past is not a foreign country. It is the foundation upon which we rest. And as you drift toward sleep, remember that you, too, are part of this long, continuous story built not on drama, but on dedication. Thank you for listening. May your rest be deep and your dreams be quiet.